Well, India's love-hate relationship with the Boeing 787 is continuing with no signs of improvement on the horizon. The latest snag coming as India's aviation regulator just made a decision that's sparking major controversy among Dreamliner pilots by extending pilot duty hours on long-haul Boeing 787 flights. The move, officials say, is meant to prevent flight disruptions, but pilots warn it can come at the cost of safety. Over the weekend, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or the DGCA, announced that it will allow pilots flying Boeing 787 Dreamliners to stay on duty an hour longer. That means flight duty periods can now stretch from 13 to 14 hours, and the maximum time actually spent in the air has also gone up slightly from 10 to 10.5 hours. For those non-airline pilots out there, in simple terms, the flight duty period is the total time a pilot is officially allowed on the clock, from the moment they report for duty before takeoff until the engines are shut down after the final landing of the day. This new rule applies to 8 international routes, including Delhi to Copenhagen, Milan, Zurich, and 2 to France, and London Gatwick. But the DGCA says the change was needed to prevent passenger inconvenience and flight disruptions, especially since the closure of Pakistani airspace has forced many airlines to reroute many long-haul flights. So to balance things out, the regulator also ordered that pilots get an extra hour of rest during layovers, and it has put a hold on flight training operations along these affected routes. However, while this new rule makes sense to the DGCA, India's Dreamliner pilots could not disagree more. The Airline Pilots Association of India, or the ALPA, blasted the decision as, quote, a matter of grave operational and safety concern. In a letter to the DGCA, the association said extending pilot duty hours creates a scenario ripe for fatigue-induced errors, directly contradicting international safety norms. They also pointed out that the existing 10-hour flight limit was already at the upper edge of safe fatigue management. And more importantly, they argue India doesn't have a pilot shortage that would justify stretching these limits any further. However, adding to the concern, the pilots cited a recent directive from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, which restricted the reclining function of the captain's seat on Boeing 787s. That rule, meant to address a safety issue, has made it much harder for crews to get quality rest during long-haul flights. According to the ALPA India, airlines around the world responded by adding an extra pilot to share the workload. But unlike the FAA in the U.S., India's regulator has gone completely in the other direction, extending duty hours for 2-person crews instead of mandating an augmented one. In their letter, the pilots accused the DGCA of prioritizing airline convenience over passenger safety, reminding officials that India's civil aviation requirements were built on years of international research and aligned with the global standards for fatigue management, emphasizing that those rules exist for a reason, to protect both pilots and passengers from the dangers of exhaustion at 35,000 feet. But for now at least, the DGCA insists the move is just temporary. But the debate it sparked over pilot fatigue and flight safety is likely to last much longer than the extension itself. Well, speaking of the Dreamliner, Air India is back in the headlines, but this time it's not because of a safety issue, a delay, or even missing luggage. No, this one involves a cockroach. And let's just say the crew's method of dealing with it has the internet howling. Tata Group-owned Air India is trending again after an entry from one of its official cabin defect logs, basically a technical record for in-flight issues, went viral online. The document reportedly came from a flight between Delhi and Dubai, where a passenger spotted a live cockroach on board. Now, finding a creepy, crawly cockroach on a plane is already bad enough, but it's what happened next that has everyone talking. According to the log, the crew noted that a passenger found a cockroach alive. And the follow-up note? Well, that's where things take a turn. It simply reads, "Cockroach hanged until death," followed by the word "kalas," a popular Dubai slang term that means finished or done. Yes, you heard that right. The cockroach was officially declared dead by hanging. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word correct or not, so if you know, let me know down below. The entry date at October 24 has sent aviation fans and social media users into a frenzy. Some are calling it Air India's first public execution. Well, that might be too soon. While others are applauding the crew's creativity in documentation. On X, formerly Twitter, the post has racked up thousands of likes and reposts, with users joking that the airline has finally taken zero tolerance to a new level. Now for context, cabin defect logs are normally used to record routine in-flight issues, things like broken seatbelts, flickering screens, or jammed tray tables. They're not exactly meant for pest control poetry. Once the plane lands, engineers and maintenance teams use those logs to fix what's reported. But in this case, it seems that the crew couldn't resist a little creative flair. Aviation experts say that while humor like this rarely makes it into official paperwork, it looks like this one somehow slipped through the cracks. Or in this case, maybe crawled through them. Still, the post has been pure entertainment gold. As of now, Air India hasn't released any official comment confirming whether the log entry is real or just an elaborate meme. My money's on real. But that hasn't stopped the laughs from flying. And honestly, at a time when airlines are usually in the news for cancellations and complaints, it's kind of refreshing to see one making headlines for something that's, well, accidentally or intentionally hilarious. And in our final story, we go from bad to worse. After a Delta Airlines first-class passenger was poisoned, yes, poisoned, by a toxic weed in his salad while flying from Chicago to Seattle on October 21, en route back to be with his father, who passed away from cancer. After reporting the meal issue on board, a flight attendant stole the evidence, he says, in an attempt to cover it up. The reader found the poisonous weed called black nightshade or Solanium nigrum in his meal, only realizing what it was after he ate some. Okay, I have a question at this point. How many other people on Earth would actually have known what the hell they were eating? And how many people have become ill without knowing that they were poisoned? Let me know down below. Anyway, the flight was met by paramedics on arrival in Seattle. But apparently this weed is some really nasty stuff with typical onset of early symptoms like nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and a bitter or burning taste in the mouth 30 minutes to 3 hours after ingestion. Other symptoms include drowsiness, confusion, slowed pulse, dilated pupils, and in higher doses, respiratory depression or coma. Usually patients recover within 24 hours. However, fatalities do occur, but mostly in children. The passenger said that while eating a Southwest Harvest salad in the dimmed cabin, he tasted something off as he swallowed a mouthful of salad. But upon closer inspection, he promptly found a sizable stalk of black nightshade, flowers and all. This is a well-known toxic plant that is a weed routinely found in agricultural settings. The problem is he swallowed it before looking at it and became quite ill with all of the typical symptoms: intestinal cramping, diarrhea, excessive salivation, nausea, and vomiting. But the passenger wrote that fortunately he was able to save the uneaten stalk of nightshade to provide to the paramedics who took him off the plane at SeaTac so they'd know what they were dealing with. But this is where things take a criminal turn, because he said he had informed the lead flight attendant, and he named her, Larissa, of his intention to save the specimen, as he called it. But while he was in the first-class bathroom blowing chunks out of every hole, Larissa, the head flight attendant, took the vile weed and refused to return it to the now poisoned passenger. And worse, she refused to show it to the paramedics. She claimed it was Delta's property now. Nice to know Delta embraces their crappy reputation for safety. He says he reached out to Delta with concern over the incident, and their response seemed callous. Just an offer of 3,000 extra miles. But according to a Delta spokesman, they said, "We take this report seriously and remain in touch with the customer. Our next steps are to investigate what is being said, and we'll go from there." Because Delta has a stringent security and quality assurance measure embedded within their onboard food and beverage operation, or so they say. And in closing, in hindsight, the poisoned Delta passenger said, "I guess I should have ordered the meatballs." Well, that's what I would have ordered. How about you?